Dune is now 9 months, and I just procrastinated talking about issues I had during my pregnancy with him and his birth story for a lot of reasons. I'm going to do a few videos on this, but today I'm just going to talk about, basically this is just a birth story video, a birth story, not really a vlog, but just kind of telling you about Dune's birth story with the issues that I had in my pregnancy. And so we're going over a bunch of things, but a summary real quick is basically just my risk in pregnancy, having a marginal cord insertion, having a C-section birth, and what I'm really glad that I did during pregnancy in preparation for his birth. Just basically, I didn't talk a lot about the details of my pregnancy and the issues that I was having because I didn't want to put out the negative energy with it, and I didn't want to perpetuate my own, I'm getting like anxious now thinking about all of it. I didn't want to perpetuate my own anxiety around the problems that I was having. And I just didn't want to put that out there because for me, like, talking about it perpetuated my anxiety more. So I really just wanted to focus on like positive things. And then I just had a hard time like coming to terms with his birth, like basically like how it happened, that it made me not want to like talk about it. Like, I think because I ended up having a C-section and I never went into labor. I'll get into why on all this in a second. But it just made me feel like he didn't have a birth story, which isn't true. Just, I don't know how else. I've not done like a more like personal sitting down video. I have to do another video on postpartum struggles. I don't want to tangent to it, otherwise we'll be here for like over an hour. But I'll do a separate video for that because I feel like those are separate things. So, okay, we had a lot of questions on pregnancy. I just like ended up with all this anxiety at the end. I feel like I really like couldn't talk about a lot of things, and it's just been a big procrastination. But anyways, I'm feeling so much better now. Just struggling with postpartum depression was like a whole nother thing that also made me procrastinate talking about all of this. I don't think I'm gonna get emotional. I feel like because I waited, like all my hormones are like in a better place. Your hormones after you give birth are just, they're so all over the place. You're literally like just emotional about everything. So I just feel like all of that, like postpartum depression, having, you know, the hormones are all crazy, having all that anxiety that I had, and having still a lot of anxiety even after he was born, and then it became worse because it was postpartum anxiety, just so many things. Anyways, I'm not trying to get into that. Just stay tuned for another video on that because I will talk about all those things. I didn't know anybody personally that had the issues that I had. I met like one other girl in my prenatal yoga class who had the more severe thing of what I had. And then my my parents' neighbor had a little boy like 2 years before Dune, and she had the same exact thing, and it was all positive outcomes. But anyways, there wasn't a lot online about the issue that I had, that I wanted to see positive hope that it was gonna be okay. That's like all I wanted. So that's why I'm sharing this, is because especially if you're watching this video and you have what I had, I just want to give you the hope and the reassurance that like it's going to be okay, and you're going to have like a healthy baby. Like with my issues, I end up having a healthy, beautiful baby. So I just, want to do it for you who, especially if you're going through what I went through, to just like have a positive story to, hold on to while you're walking through it too. So anyways, if you want to like catch up on my other like me finding out the gender and like kind of finding out I'm pregnant, all of that, I have other videos that you can watch. So you can go watch those, how I found out and everything. When we found out his gender, and I haven't shared this online, it's literally the first time I've shared this online. When we found out his gender, we also found out that I had a marginal cord insertion. And what that means is that the umbilical cord is on the side of my placenta instead of in the middle. So that meant that he was getting, that it would like impact the nutrients that he was getting. So at 20 weeks, he was measuring at like almost 50%. So that's like very normal average size baby. He was like measuring a very normal average size. Everything looked normal. We never did there's like tests you can do really early in your pregnancy, that you can find out if they have like other genetic issues. We actually never did that. I mean, he didn't have any, end up having any, but you usually find out all that stuff if you don't do that early test. You find it out at like the 20 week when they do the whole anatomy scan at the 20 week ultrasound. I didn't even have my first ultrasound until like 17 weeks because I just couldn't get in. And then I also switched practices, because that's another thing I recommend. If you are not happy with your practice, like switch. I'm so glad I switched. So at 20 weeks, I had my first appointment at like, I don't know, 17 weeks at this one practice, and it was a practice that I went to growing up, and I had all my like regular OB appointments, OB/GYN appointments there, like my annual checkups. I had all those at that practice, like all through college, and that just was my go-to place. So then when I was like, okay, I'm going to go back there, and I went back there to get my first appointment being pregnant. It was just absolutely horrible. I cried. And I was just like, it wasn't the support that I was looking for and what I needed. I really wanted to have a natural birth, and I just wanted a little bit more like of a holistic care approach. So I switched practices and then finally got into another practice at around like 18 weeks. And then like 2 weeks later, it was 20 weeks that we did the anatomy scan. So at the 20 weeks, I switched practices, which I'm really, really glad I did. So I really suggest it. I saw midwives and doctors. And so I really, really suggest that even if you don't want a natural birth, I really, really suggest it. That like seeing midwives, I just liked the approach of their practice better, but I liked that, I also met with all the doctors too, which ultimately I needed that. So I'm really glad I did that. I really suggest it. I also had a doula, which ultimately I already referenced. I had a C-section. I didn't end up needing a doula for a C-section, but I just like did all the things in preparation for a natural birth. I went to prenatal yoga every week. That is one of the things I'm so glad I did every week. That was like my top priority. It was something that I always like really looked forward to. I never really thought about being pregnant like ever. Like I never like daydreamed about all that stuff. But the one thing I did always think about was like, oh, I just would love to go to prenatal yoga one day. I just like saw myself doing that. And it was something I did every week. I did it with a few of my girlfriends who were also pregnant here. And that was just so fun. I looked forward to it. And it was more than just like a yoga practice. Like we would like talk and everyone would talk about like what they're going through that week. So it was really great to just like find a community of other, soon to be moms, or like they're already moms, they're having second or third kids. And also meeting like other women who are about to have children that are like the same age as yours. So now it's like, now we've done like play dates and stuff. So it was just really great. It was great to have that test space every week, especially going into it as a first time mom, like just like making sure I was like weekly taking that time for myself to do something that I know was going to look so different once baby was here. So, okay, 20 weeks, we go to the anatomy scan. Everything's looking really healthy. He's measuring like almost 50%. And that's when they found the marginal cord insertion. And like everything was fine, but they were just like, okay, we're going to need to, keep an eye on this basically. So, right then and there, they're like, this could lead to, basically like having a low birth weight and having restricted growth, which basically, if your baby's born with like a really low birth rate or restricted growth, with the restricted growth, I mean, they could just be really unproportional, like not deformed, but like their like head could be like way bigger than the rest of their body. Like some weird things can happen with a low birth rate. Like you like most likely might have to be in the NICU for a while. It's just gonna be like, and then also with low birth rate, you're at a higher increased risk of SIDS. So just a lot of like scary things, I just felt like I was like, oh my gosh, all of these things now are like possible. And she my ultrasound tech, who was so reassuring, she's like, we're just going to keep monitoring it and I'm going to schedule you for a lot more ultrasounds. So like normally, at least in our practice here, that would have been like pretty much the end of my ultrasounds. I had the anatomy scan at 20 weeks, like no more ultrasounds after that. They do a lot in the beginning. But then they're like done if everything looks normal. But because of this, they're like, all right, we're going to schedule you already for a lot more ultrasounds. So they scheduled me at like 28 weeks, 30, 34 weeks, 30. And then I think we couldn't like schedule out all the way to like 36 weeks yet at that point. But those were the increments so far. So anyways, go about everything fine. Also, he was positioned like in the proper like head down. Like he was in the perfect position at that point. So when I go back for my 28-week check, we did an ultrasound and they found he had basically decreased his size by half. So he's already at like 20%. And at that point, he also flipped the other way. So now he was breech. He was frank breech, which is what he stayed in the whole rest of the time, despite all of my attempts to do the spinning babies and get him turned upside down because I really wanted a natural birth. That's my other lesson. And I'm really glad I went to a practice that was midwives and doctors because I just wanted to have all the options. So I'm really glad I did that. But, you know, I did all the things, but, you know, eventually by the time he needed to come out, that he was still in breech. So that was the one thing I wanted, a natural birth, but I was not comfortable with having a breech natural birth. So, and I also didn't want to be induced because I know that would really impact having a really hard birth too. So anyways, 28 weeks, he's like 20% size. Basically with this marginal cord insertion, it being on the side, picture that like all the food that I'm eating is like a little funnel. So like it's all coming in here and then it's like only like I'm eating all of this but instead of normally they're getting all the nutrients, he's only getting a small portion. So they were like, okay, we're going to schedule you for a lot more ultrasounds. She was doing like all the measurements and we did a stress test. So she said, okay, starting at like, was it 32 or 34 weeks? I was going to start coming in basically every week and doing stress tests and ultrasounds so that we could measure him and make sure he wasn't under stress. So at that time, what I did, and so the issue was, because I've talked to other soon-to-be moms or current moms who like, if your baby's like small, like there's nothing wrong with that. It's the thing where they're decreasing in size. That's like a warning sign of something. Or potential problems. So like if he was like, let's say he was at 10%. So basically what they told me is they just wanted to prevent him from getting below 10%. If he dropped below 10% in size, then he would need to come out right away. Because he was just like at risk for a lot of things. I don't even know all the details, but it was basically just like my benchmark goes, okay, he's just got to stay above 10%. That's all we need. We got to keep him above 10%. So that was the issue, is like he was decreasing in size. So he went from like almost 50 to like 20 something. Versus if he had been like at 10 or 9, like the whole time, that'd be normal. Like he's like growing at his steady pace, but he's decreasing in size. So they scheduled more ultrasounds. So starting at like 32 weeks, I had like another one at 30 weeks, 32 weeks. I would go in every week to the hospital and get an ultrasound. By 34 weeks, I was going 3 times a week to the hospital for an ultrasound and stress tests. I did an ultrasound once a week. At like 36 weeks, I did like 2 ultrasounds. I started doing 2 ultrasounds a week at 36 weeks. Anyways, at like my 30-week appointment, they basically told me that like starting at 34, 36 weeks, I needed to have my hospital bag packed and I needed to come in like ready to have a baby. Like needed to be ready. So that was like a whole nother anxiety thing, because I don't think I even made like a registry and figured out what I even wanted or needed until like 32 weeks. So yeah. So I had to be like, basically I had to be ready by 36 weeks, like that he was coming out like a month to 6 weeks early. The 36-week appointment, he then went from 20, he had gone from 20% to 10%. And they were just like, all right, he's at 10%. Or no, he's like 11% or something. And they're like, okay, you know what? He can, as long as he stays around here, he can stay in. And so I just hoped every time I went to the hospital. So I was going 3 times a week. And then, but at 36 weeks, because they're like, okay, he's at 11%. And so for the next 2 weeks, she was like, so we're going to schedule you to have this baby at 38 weeks. Basically, my doctor, with all her research that she had done, and I think she consulted with another doctor who like led the research or something, I don't know, on basically this issue with marginal cord insertions and restricted growth. Like they always say like, okay, they need to come out at 38 weeks. That's just whatever their findings. I'm not a doctor, don't quote me, but I trust them. I trust my practice. The practice that I went to, they have the lowest rate of cesarean sections, lowest rate of C-sections in all of Virginia. They really prioritize natural births. So I went to this practice knowing that, because that's what I wanted. So when they're telling me, hey, we really suggest that you get a C-section, because he's breech. So he was breech the whole time. At the end, when they're saying, hey, you know, because of this issue that you have and the risk that he has, he needs to come out earlier. You know, I know that they really prioritize, you know, such a natural way to give birth, that if they're telling me these things, I'm like, okay, like I need to listen to this. So that's why I say, like, really find a practice that aligns with like your values so that you know you can trust them. So I know that like their priorities are not to have C-sections. Their priorities are to be like natural and let the baby stay in as long as they can, you know, 40 weeks, I think, you know, up to 41 weeks basically, you know, not pushing and being induced unless like absolutely have to, like, sort of thing. So I just really trusted that, because of their values and everything I'd heard from other people who go to this practice, that you know, when they're making this recommendation for me, that like this really is like the best approach. So at 36 weeks, I started going in for ultrasounds 3 times a week, and he was breech. We scheduled me at 38 weeks to have a C-section and for him to come out. And I went in 3 times a week to check that he wasn't under stress. So basically every time I went in, if they had found him under stress, then I would have been sent to L&D and he would have been born. But he wasn't. So her recommendation, so if you are going through this and you're watching this too, something that I did, basically he was born basically like up until my delivery. He stayed at around 10%. That was the benchmark. Like if he had dropped under, then he would need to come out. And so I think the biggest things that I did, so my lab tech, my ultrasound tech, she was like, you need to not stress and relax and eat healthy and exercise. She was like, that was her recommendations. But one of the main things that I did was that I tripled my protein intake. So I was having 150 grams of protein a day. Basically starting at 28 weeks, I started literally tracking. I like tripled doubled my calorie intake and in order to like meet this 150 grams of protein too. So I was having like probably 3,000 calories a day. So by the end of this, I gained like almost 50 pounds. That's a whole nother story, but I'm very grateful I did, because now I'm going to tell you part of the specifics of like the birth, and then like we'll backtrack about like C-section and stuff and prep and stuff. But I tripled my protein intake. So I was having like anywhere between 130 to 150 grams of protein a day, around 3,000 calories a day. I went on a walk every day. I did my weekly prenatal yoga. I would do a little bit of like yoga and stuff. I basically changed. Normally I'm like really into HIIT and like boot camps and like a lot of running. I really changed how I worked out to be more like relaxing, and I did a lot of meditation and you know, trying to stay healthy. I did like long hour and a half walks. But I really think having all that protein, because they say protein is what builds a baby. Like literally protein is what builds a human. So, and I had like I was never vegan, but I followed a very plant-based diet. So it was really hard for me I started, and that was one, I think I said it in my other video. That was one of the reasons I felt like I was having a boy. But it was like how I knew I was pregnant to begin with is I suddenly started craving meat. Like I was craving protein. But I really upped it. And I really think that made a huge difference in keeping him above that 10%, because again, it's like that funnel, so he was just not getting all of the nutrients he needed. So I was like, okay, how can I pack as much in so he can get as much possible? And I really think that made a huge difference. So when Dune was born, he was literally the lowest weight you can be before low birth weight. And I honestly think it was because like I really prioritized eating so much protein that like got him there. So he was 5 pounds 8 ounces, which is literally if he had been 5 pounds 7 ounces, now we're in low birth weight range. We would have had to stay in the NICU. There would have been all these other things we would have had to do and issues, and maybe would have impacted my breastfeeding even more. I don't know. But so I'm just like so grateful. So yeah, I gained like 50 pounds, which has been literally just so hard to get off, but like it was so worth it. And like that's just what I needed to do to like have a healthy baby. And I was so worried, and especially because at the end when he'd like dropped down to 10%. So what happens also with this restricted growth, if your baby has restricted growth in the womb, the head, I learned this from my lab tech, but the head prioritizes itself. So the head is going to steal like a lot more of the nutrients in the body. That's why you can get like, that's why I was like freaked out. I was like, God, give him so much protein. The head is going to prioritize taking all the nutrients. So his head, is like a higher percentile than the rest of his body. But it's like, you see him and he like looks normal. He looks fine. So anyways, that was like another worry that I had. So I just wanted to give you that reassurance if like you're going through this and having these issues, like, I don't know. So I did the protein thing, and I think that was the biggest thing, the lack, not stressing. And he was born right at like the benchmark of not being low birth weight. And so it was just a blessing, and it was amazing. It makes me so happy. It's just, I wish I had this story of like, it just, all my anxiety was relieved. Like when I heard him cry when he was born, I just was this wave of relief and washed over me, because I was like, oh my gosh, he's alive. Like he's there, and I saw him and I'm like, he's a healthy, normal, beautiful baby. And he wasn't low birth weight. He was like on the low end. So that's just like a whole nother thing. So we had to go get, my mom literally ran to Target and got all these preemie clothes, whatever they had left in stock. And thank goodness for her neighbor who went through the same thing. And her son was also a preemie size. So had to run. I had all the diapers I had were for newborn. All the clothes I had were for newborn. So we didn't have any preemie size anything. But it was okay, because we just, Amazoned it and went to Target. And thankfully my mom went to Target. I did not go to Target. My mom went to Target, and she got everything we needed for us, because he was born, and I was like, oh, I didn't know I didn't know I'd be needing all the preemie size stuff. So yeah, just a little positivity. So the other thing is, I also didn't want to share for a long time about that, like Dune, I don't know what it is, like Dune being a boy. I just didn't want to like be sharing like, oh, he's a small baby. Like I don't want like that to be a part of like, it's such a short time, and you don't know. But I just didn't want even that like as a part of his like identity, or like being out there publicly, that like, oh, he's a small baby. I just think like when people, I know from my experience growing up, when people talk about, like, your parents or friends or just people around you talk about you in a certain way, and it could be negative, it could be positive, whatever it is, but it, like, you can take it in as part of your identity because you're just still growing up and you don't really know what your identity is yet. So I just, like, I didn't want to put all that out there. I didn't want to put all of this out there and perpetuate my own anxiety and, like, worries. So now it's like I can share about it, and, you know, hopefully this helps you if you're going through similar struggles. So yeah, it's ever since, you know, now if you're going through this, like, he hit all of his milestones of needing to, like, double his weight. You know, he hit his birth weight after, at whatever the benchmark is, they have to, like, hit their birth weight by a certain time. Then they have to, like, double their birth weight by a certain time. So we've done all that. So it's just letting you know it's possible that if you're going through this, you will have a healthy baby and you don't need to be so stressed and worried. And I just hope, you know, this can give you that positive energy for if you're going through this in your pregnancy. And that will kind of explain, if you've been following me, like, one of the reasons why I've been so removed more in this last year than I've normally been. I've been sharing my life online for over 5 years. I'm always pretty, like, open about a lot of things, but that's why I feel like I really took a step back after I got pregnant, and became more just, it was all that anxiety and worry, and I just didn't want to put it out there. So that's kind of explaining, if you're following me, like, why I kind of fell off a little bit on how I normally show up. So now we're doing a lot better. So going into his birth. Okay, so let's talk about C-section. I also want to share this because I was so unprepared for what a C-section was like. I was so scared. And, like, I don't want to scare you if you have to have a C-section and it's not your choice. But, like, when it's not, like, obviously it was my choice. Like, you know, like, I ultimately said, like, okay, yes, I will have a C-section after my doctor advised it. It is still really scary. And, like, you know, so that's just, you can't plan your birth. You can't plan a perfect birth, but you can do a lot of things, whatever you can to prepare. So I'm really glad still that I had consulted with a doula and, like, gone to prenatal yoga. And honestly, even if you are planning to have a C-section, so I'm just going to suggest this for everybody, because you won't know you're going to have a C-section unless it's, like, you're choosing it and you're just like, I want to have a C-section. I really suggest you go to prenatal yoga, go once a week. I honestly think I needed that more for the C-section than I would a natural birth. I was, like, so scared going into the delivery room. I ran out of recording space on the, oh wait, that was a little bear. Ran out of recording space. I had to, like, start the video again. And then Dune's little surfboard fell. Anyways, okay. So now let's talk about C-section and Dune's birth story, basically. So I felt like I didn't have a birth story for a while because I never went into labor. So anyways, because he was Frank Breech, which meant he had his feet, like, up by his head, so I had to have a C-section, which obviously wasn't my choice, but, you know, it was my choice because I, was like, I'm not okay with doing a natural birth with C-section. Anyways, really suggest you do prenatal yoga. I'm so glad for having a C-section that I had prenatal yoga. Anyways, I don't want to, like, scare you or anything if you're going to if you end up, you know, needing to have a C-section, but it, like, I think because it wasn't ultimately what I wanted, and I'm like, I think that's the other thing is, like, if you can prevent yourself from, like, wanting like, whatever, like, just thinking of what birth should be, just don't, because it's just gonna make you, like, not meet your expectations. Anyways, so at 38 weeks, so I had all these appointments and we were checking them. I was, like, literally at the hospital the day before, and we did a stress test just to, like, make sure, because that's just, like, when they were scheduling me for the stress tests. And then my scheduled date, I literally, like, called the hospital at 36 weeks, and they're like, so when do you want his birthday to be? And I'm like, that's funny, I get to pick his birthday. So I'm like, all right, January 14th, that sounds good. It's close to President's, or whatever that holiday is it MLK Day? So I'm like, oh, he always have a 3-day weekend over his birthday. I don't know, I just thought that was funny. And it was like right when he was 38 weeks. So I didn't want to like delay further just with like all the issues. So, yeah, I couldn't like eat after like a certain time before, and like I had to go into the hospital because this is like COVID stuff too. I had to go into the hospital like a few days before and like get COVID tested, and they did my blood work and stuff like that. And then so I had it scheduled on Friday morning, and so we go in. It's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 a.m. I think I wake up at 4 a.m. and I like curl my hair. It was so weird because I'm like so pregnant, and I was not at that point. Like, I think some women are like, they're so ready, but I really loved being pregnant, and so like I felt fine, you know. But it was just so weird. Like, we go to the hospital, it's really freaking January and cold, and we show up. So I wake up at 4 a.m. and like curl my hair, and like I like 2 days because I knew he was coming, like 2 days before, I'm like got my eyelashes done and got my nails done, got my hair done. So that morning I like wake up and like curl my hair. By the way, I've had my hospital bag packed for over a month at this point, so just so you know. But anyways, had everything ready, and we just go to the hospital, and we get there and we check in. So like we go into the hospital, and then we have to go like over to the maternity area where they do the surgeries. So we go into this one room that's like the waiting room, and so like Justin and I are just like hanging out. I couldn't eat, you know, before a certain time. We're just like, I don't know, it just was so weird. It was so weird. Like, just be like knowing. And so I didn't go into labor at all. Like, I don't know what that feels like. And part of me felt like I still struggle with this a little bit. Like, that I don't know what it's like. And I've, you know, just struggled with that. But, you know, I have to say, for as hard as surgery is, it was fast. Like, overall, you know, it's like we knew he was coming on this day, and we went and we showed up. So anyways, we're there, and eventually I like get dressed, I like undress, and I get the gown on, and Justin's with me, and he's got like our bags, and then eventually they take me away to go into the surgery room, and that's when I start like, I'm not hyperventilating, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in this room, you know, it's like a hospital surgery room, and you know, this is just what I have to say, like, it was so hard for me to talk about after giving birth, and I think it's because all your hormones are just like, you're so emotional, so like just everything makes you cry. So definitely a lot easier to talk about now after, like when my hormones like aren't crazy. So we're in there, and so basically what they do is like I'm sitting on the table, and then they need to do the spinal tap. So this is very similar to epidural, but like they're making your body numb up into like your boobs. Like basically up, but from your boobs down, like you're numb. And it hurt. Like them putting it in like they put it in like the top back of my spine. I think it's similar to epidural. Like I have no idea really. I mean, I haven't done that. But like they literally like make everything numb, and I'm like sitting on the table, and it's like freezing in the room. And I'm like, and when I'm really nervous and anxious, I start to shiver. Like, I just get really cold. So, like, the room's already cold, and then I'm getting, like, my anxious shiver cold and, like, nervous energy. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So, anyways, I'm, like, sitting there. And it, like, hurts. And it's, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm just, like, sitting on this table, this literally, like, surgery table. And, like, they put the thing in, and I, like, my whole body starts to go, like, numb from, like, boobs down. Like, below my boobs down. And I like, and then, you know, they like get me down and like prep me, and there's like a curtain there, and eventually Justin comes in. Okay, but I have to say, so I literally was like freaking out the whole time. But my doctor one is absolutely amazing. So it's my other recommendation, like just find a doctor that you really like. Like she was incredible, and like the team was incredible, and just like all the nurses and assistants and anesthesiologists, everyone was amazing. And the nurse for the anesthesiologist was basically like giving me like a play-by-play. And I think it really helped that she had a C-section the year before, and she's always on them, but like she also personally had been through one, so she really knew. Like she was like, okay, here they're cutting you open now, like, okay, they're doing this, like, okay, now you're gonna feel a lot of pressure. And like my doctor was like, you know, saying things. It definitely felt like sort of like an orchestra, you know. It's like, you know, they know the drill, and they're all like, you know, doing all these things. But my doctor and the nurse for the anesthesiologist, they were just amazing and so kind and so supportive and so encouraging, and just, it really helped that they were like giving me a play-by-play, like, you're gonna feel a lot of pressure, but y'all, like, if you haven't had surgery before, so here's the other thing, if you don't know anything about it, but like, you need to be awake for this, because you're just at a huge risk if you're not awake for a C-section. So like, you need to be awake. So I felt everything. Like, it didn't hurt. Literally, there wasn't pain. It was the weirdest thing with your body like going numb, like that. It's like, it's all tingly, and it just, I felt like I'd like lay there, and I felt like I wanted to move. Like, I just felt like this big lump, and I couldn't move, and it's just the craziest feeling. Like, it's not painful, but in a way it's painful that you can't move. I don't know how to describe it. But anyways, I could feel the pressure of them moving around inside me and like opening and whatever. So basically they were like, okay, they're like, he's about to come out now. And like, it was just this insane pressure. No pain, but it was like, they like literally so Justin had come in and he was holding my hand the whole time, and like, it was like they were having to hold me down, because like my upper body down, because the pressure was just like absolutely like, and it was like, I'm scared on top of it. Now that you know all my anxiety with like the low birth weight stuff, so it's like I had all this extra anxiety as well. So it's just like, oh my gosh. So I'm like almost hyperventilating, but thank goodness, and I'm freezing, right? And so thank goodness they put this like big blowing air thing that was like warm on me. I like needed it because I was so cold. So they were like, I felt like warm, and they like tucked it all on me, and it made me like cozy. So that was really, really nice. The other really nice thing, so I don't know how this is in all hospitals, but they always play like music. So I wasn't prepared. So if you're in Virginia specifically, or even if you're in the Virginia Beach area, they play music in the surgery rooms. But so I didn't prepare like a playlist or like have something in mind, but thank goodness, like the nurse for the anesthesia, she like actually lives down the street from us, and like people just see Justin, and I think he just looks like a stereotypical surfer, and like we live at the beach, so they're just like, oh, like blah blah blah. So she was like, okay, what music do you want? This is before we get into the surgery. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't know I could have music. So I like didn't prepare anything. And I think just because she had seen Justin and saw me, and she just kind of like, and we found out like we were neighbors and we live at the beach, and her husband surfs, and just, she's like, how does Pepper sound? And I'm like, Pepper sounds perfect. So Dune was born to like the Pepper radio on Spotify. So it was like Pepper Revolution, like very, yeah, like surfy, beachy reggae vibes. Yeah, but there's a hot tip. Pick a playlist for birth, which I didn't know you could do in a C-section. But anyways, that really helped. And the fact that she was giving me a play-by-play. And then, so the other crazy thing is like, so Dune's basically, they're like, oh, I get all this pressure and he's born. And I just, as soon as he cried, then all my anxiety just, it was such a relief. I like started crying because I was like so relieved. I was just like, I just need to hear that he's crying, and like, okay. And everyone in the room is like, he's so beautiful. Like, but everyone was so positive and encouraging that, and like, I was scared out of my mind. And like the whole first month after having Dune and the C-section, I literally was like semi-traumatized by it. Like, And I know now I'm okay, but like, it was just hard having never been through surgery before and like going through it, especially when there's like more at stake with it. So it was just like traumatizing and you're like emotional and for me. So it was just really nice that like I would say if it wasn't for having such a great doctor and like a great team, I feel like I would have felt traumatized, but like it was just scary. And like after I had the surgery to have Dune, I was just like, my state of mind was like, I hope no one ever has to. I told everyone that I would ask me like, I hope you never have to have a C-section, like please, like I hope you never have to, like unless you want it, like I hope you don't, like I hope if you don't have to that you don't have to, because for me it was just so scary. But I think now, you know, now at the point I'm at now, like I feel fine and I feel like I feel very okay now. Like if I have to have another C-section, like I'm gonna be okay, like it's gonna be fine. I feel like it's just hard, and if I were to ever need to go into it a second time, like I would feel just like being prepared of what it's like. I feel like it would be it just wouldn't be as hard. But basically the story is birth is just hard no matter how you do it. Like no matter how you have to have it, it's not like this easy peasy thing. So yeah, so they bring Dune out. He's crying and like I'm like, you know, behind the little curtain because I don't want to look. So anyways, it took less than 10 minutes for them to get him out of me. But then I spent another at least half hour sitting on the table while they put me back together and sew me back up. My doctor comes over and shows me like my placenta with like this cord. She's like, here's your cord, it's on the side, like see. I mean, she made it really pretty though. She made it look like a heart. It was actually very cute. But anyways, Justin got to hold Dune first. So they like took him away and like did all their measuring, you know, made sure everything's okay. And then I was just laying there on the table, they're sewing me back up. And Justin is holding Dune over there, and then he brings them, and so they like are done. They give him to him, and then they bring him to me, and then he's just like on my chest, and I'm like in this moment where I'm like, oh my god, what do I do? I'm just like, you're just in this state of shock. It's just like my first time. Like I don't know anything. Like and he's just on me, and I'm just crying and just so relieved and happy, and I'm telling this now and it's so different to like know Dune 9 months later versus that moment. It's so different. Like, you know, I just love him. And that was the other thing I wasn't prepared for, was like what everyone's always like, oh, it's this like gush of love. And I realize now, like, you release like all these crazy hormones when you give birth, no matter how you give birth. And I realized there is like all this love going through you. And I think I was just still working through having the C-section. I just like went into this like very like just through the motions type of phase, not zoned out, but I just suddenly went into this like mode where I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out how to take care of this baby. I gotta figure out how to take care of Dune. How do I do and learn how to breastfeed and figure all this out? So I had him on my chest and all that's like kind of going through me, and I'm like crying, and I'm just like thinking the whole time like, oh my god, I'm so glad he's okay. Like when they told me his weight and they're like, he's not low birth weight, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was such a relief. So then we spent the next 2 days in the hospital, which was really great. And it was just nice to have so much support. I had like 3 lactation consultants. It was, you know, we just were there. So here's the other detail after the C-section. So like it took like over 6 hours for me to like feel my legs again. So I'm like on the table. All right. So I had Dune, and then eventually Dune and Justin like go away to like now the room we're gonna be in, and I'm just like on the table, and like literally like 6 of the staff they like do this crazy thing to like transfer me because I can't move, right? That was like the weirdest thing. It's like I could hold Dune sort of, but like I couldn't move. They do this like crazy thing where they like scooted the like this sheet like under me and on both sides so that they can like pick me up and transfer me to the moving bed. So that was crazy. They're like 1, 2, 3. It's so weird to just be. You feel useless. You feel helpless. I can't do anything. I'm just laying there, and then just are like picking me up and like putting me on that rolling bed to take me to my room. So, yeah, at that point I'm just like, oh. And there was just the next 6 hours, like I couldn't move, I couldn't get up, and you know, you gotta like have all these crazy things like a catheter taken out and like all the crazy stuff. It took a while to get that feeling back and be able to walk, and yeah, so I mean, then we were in the hospital for 2 days with Dune and just getting to know each other and learning how to breastfeed him, and just trying to figure it out for 2 days, messaging all my family, FaceTiming my family. My mom came to the hospital to meet him and help teach me how to breastfeed too. So it was just crazy, and the recovery of the C-section was really hard and long, and I feel like this video is getting really long. But I don't know, maybe I should talk about that. Maybe I'll talk about it in the postpartum one. Maybe I'll talk about that. But we won't get into all of it now. But overall, I was just really happy with, overall, you know, I didn't want to have a C-section, but that's what we needed to do since I wasn't comfortable having a breech natural birth. And it just, I don't think it could have gone any better than it did. Like, it just worked out. And he was born happy and healthy, and you're just in that little bubble. I look back on it now. And then we brought him home. And I guess that's it. Yeah, I'll talk about, in a postpartum video, I'll talk about like recovery as well, like all the postpartum struggles, and then like C-section recovery. I'll talk about that in another video. So make sure you subscribe. Also, if you have any other questions about C-section or the issues with my marginal cord insertion, or just like other pregnancy and birth stuff, like feel free to comment below, drop a question. I'd also love to know if you're having, if you have the same issue, happen to have the same thing, marginal cord insertion, drop a comment. Just, you know, throwing you the love and support on that. So let's just end the video. This was like super long. Okay, yeah. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. Ask any questions that you want. Comment below. So I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're expecting, congratulations, and I wish you the best of luck. You're gonna have the most wonderful time and wonderful little baby. And I wish you all the best. And I hope this gave you a little excitement and encouragement for what's to come. So until next time.